Hello and welcome to this episode of the Spiced In Podcast. My name is Jacob and I'm your host as we go through the world of Star Wars. We have quite a bit of actually pretty good news this week that I figured we'd go through real quick before we get to the main topic of the episode. The first is the introduction of the new book, Star Wars: The Jedi Mind. It is sort of a mindfulness and mental well-being book, but in the frame of like Jedi teachings. I thought it sounded really interesting. It's written by Amy Ratcliffe with illustrations by Christina Chung and releases on November 10th, 2020. I think I might pick it up and check it out. It sounds pretty interesting. In addition to that, we had Solo come out on Disney Plus this past Friday. So I've not had a chance to watch it since then, but I'll probably watch it this coming week. It's easily the movie I've seen least in the whole Star Wars canon. So I'll have to definitely refresh my memory on that. We also had the final two authors announced for Empire Strikes Back from a certain point of view. If you remember correctly, we had all the other authors announced, I would say probably 2 or 3 weeks back. But there were two that were left off, and those are Katie Cook and Sarwat Chadha. So those will be on the list as well. The biggest news definitely this week is Thrawn Ascendancy Chaos Rising had an excerpt release. So much anticipated Thrawn prequel trilogy coming out this fall. Well, the first book is coming out this fall. They released the prologue, which I definitely read through. Got me really excited for the book. We also got the Barnes & Noble special edition poster released, revealed. It is Thrawn, all blue on a black background with the banners of the ruling houses of the Chiss Ascendancy. So that looks really cool. I don't think I'm going to pick it up. I already pre-ordered mine through Amazon. And the Barnes & Noble's copy is like an extra $10, so I don't really feel like that just for a poster. So that is that. And the current plan for next week is to talk about Queen's Peril by E.K. Johnston. But if I do not finish that book, then I think instead we'll do a heavy breakdown of that excerpt next week. If we do Queen's Peril, then that'll probably be the week after. That's my thoughts so far. The last bit of news I have is not so much news for Star Wars as it is news for me. I kind of made a purchase this past week. I ended up getting an Oculus Rift S. So I've been having a lot of fun with that. And I played through the 3 parts of the Vader Immortal series. It's a whole lot of fun. And I really enjoyed it. I'm thinking maybe, so I'm moving in about a month. We're going to get a much bigger place. And I'll have my own office space. Right now I'm in pretty much the smallest possible like VR setup that is like still functional, but soon I'll have my own office when we move, so I'll have a lot more space. I might do a stream of the all three parts of Vader Immortal. They're only probably, I would say, like 2 hours in total for all 3 parts, so I think it'll be kind of a fun just like weekend evening thing. If you guys wanted to check that out, I'd probably do it on YouTube, just since I have the YouTube channel all set up, so I thought that would be fun. And then I'll also definitely check out Tales from Galaxy's Edge when that comes out later this year, and that is anticipated to be Oculus, since all the Vader Immortal games, which were also ILM XLab, were also Oculus exclusive at first. So I'll definitely check that out. Maybe do a stream of that as well, depending on how it is, and just kind of share it with you guys and see what's going on there. But that's about all we got for news. So this brings us to the main topic of our episode. I'm really excited to have Brickhardmeat on from the Galaxy of Beeroes podcast. They are a Star Wars Galaxy Heroes and beer podcast. It's a whole lot of fun. I've been on there twice now to talk Star Wars with them, and we had Darth Darkett on the show back in May now for the Clone Wars finale. So I knew I had to have Brickhardmeat on, his co-host, for something. So we are here to talk about the old Star Wars MMO, Star Wars Galaxy. So sit back and enjoy the interview. It was a lot of fun, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Alright, so with our next segment, we have Brickhardmeat from the Galaxy of Beeroes podcast. Brick, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
Yeah, no problem. We had your co-host Darth Darkett on, probably would have been, I think, April now, with the conclusion of Clone Wars, and I knew I had to find a reason to get you on as well. So I figured we would talk about the first Legends non-canon topic of the show, and that is Star Wars Galaxies.
Yes.
So you have a big history of that game.
Oh yeah, man. I love that game. It's probably my favorite game I've ever played. I don't know. It's up there.
Wow.
It's one of my favorites.
Okay. So just a background for those who aren't familiar with the game. It was an MMO made by Sony that came out back in 2003. And like, WoW and its, contemporaries, had like a $15 a month subscription fee. It had 3 big expansions over the course of the game. And it came to its dear end in 2011, 8 years of a game. I personally, 2003, I would have been 7. So not really the prime MMO age, but I had a small encounter with the game. My parents bought it for me for Christmas, not knowing what it was. They're like, "Oh, it's Star Wars. It's on the computer. He'll love it." And then they installed it and saw you had to pay $15 a month, and they noped out of that real quick. They're like, "Oh, really? Nope, we're taking that back." So actually,
oh, that's funny.
Instead,
man.
I got KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, this exact copy right here.
Nice. Hey, not a bad trade-off, man.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I actually have
great game there.
I have my Star Wars Galaxies special edition.
Nice.
As you can see here.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I mean, we both came out on top, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know you've talked about it a little bit on the your podcast, so I figured I'd have you here to talk about it more and see what your experience was with that.
Yeah, for sure.
And in true Galaxy of Beeroes fashion, I don't know if you came from one, but I have a beer with me.
Nice. I don't. I'm lame, dude.
Oh.
This is I a little behind the curtain of the Galaxy of Beeroes podcast. I typically drink only every other weekend because I have no self-control, so I have to limit myself.
Understandable. All right. Well, I got a barley wine, so it'll be enough for both of us.
Okay, perfect. I will live vicariously through you. I realized I've been saying vicariously for all my life, and that's not the word. That's not it. Vicarious.
I think my big thing along those lines is I always say both instead of both.
Okay, both. Throw an L, yeah.
Yeah.
Weird's a word. Well,
yeah, that's fine.
That was actually perfect.
Totally intentional.
Right.
Yep. All right. So about the game, you've talked about it a few times on Galaxy of Beeroes, I feel like.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier, but there's 3 major expansions in the game. You had a Jump to Lightspeed, Rage of the Wookiees, and the Trial of Obi-Wan. So, I don't know, was there any point where you really felt the game had a huge shift that was noticeable for you?
I played the game at launch. I started and didn't know what I was doing. This is the first real MMO that I had played up to this point. It definitely was. Yep. Because after I played this one, then I kind of dipped my toe in the water with EverQuest, and this was the first one, and I played all up until they released a combat upgrade, and that is when I dipped out. So I never actually played any of the expansions. I didn't get that far.
Wow.
Yeah, so I missed out on all of that.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So, and I feel like I skipped a step. How'd you? Yeah. You said you started at launch. How'd you get into the game? It was just see you with Star Wars, and it's I want to do that.
It's a funny story. In high school, I had a group of friends, and we were all just huge Star Wars fans. And there was a mention of this game, and I think it was in probably Game Informer or something like that, where they were teasing that it was coming out, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, Star Wars! This is awesome!" And this was a long time before I think it actually came out. I want to say over a year, but we were just so excited, and we were all talking about it. Oh yeah, I'm gonna get it. We're gonna play together. We can play Star Wars together online. This is gonna be great. And the game released, and I bought it. I was prepared, and none of my friends bought it. So I was just the sole person playing the game. But it's a social game, so I really wasn't alone. But none of my friends lived up on their end of the bet or the deal, I guess. But yeah, so I started playing and had to quickly upgrade my computer multiple times because our family computer was not up to snuff. It was rough, man, starting out.
Yeah, I feel that. It was with, was it Star Wars The Old Republic MMO that came out probably, 2011 maybe? Something like that?
Yeah.
I remember I remember it's like, well, because I played the first KOTOR. I had not played the second one at that point, but I saw this come out. I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. I love games, and I love Old Republic. I'll, like, get this game. And I read the books leading up to it and everything.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, my family computer's like, saw that game. It's like, yeah, that's going to be a hard no for me.
Yeah, I remember specifically playing Star Wars Galaxies, and when you start out in the game, you start out in it's like a hospital in the game, and there's like, you know, those, what are they, the cryo chamber or whatever, I don't know what you call them.
Mm-hmm.
But you walk out, and then you're in this city. I think I was on Naboo, so probably Theed, and I just remember being so choppy. It was just like, you know, freezing for 5 seconds. And then my guy's running into a wall, you know, freeze for another 10 seconds. Like, it was just horrible. We had horrible internet and just a horrible computer. Was not gaming prepared at all. It was horrible.
Right. Yeah, and that was like the thing with the Old Republic is before the game, even before the game came out, they had like these insanely beautiful like cinematic trailers and stuff like that. I don't know if you remember seeing those.
No, I didn't.
It's like these awesome, like these beautiful cinematics of like these fights, because like the kind of the catalyst for the game was like there was a Sith invasion on like the Jedi Temple.
Oh yeah.
So you have,
I did
like,
see those. Yes.
Yeah, so you have these giant fights going down, and I'm pretty sure that it was like a pre-rendered video that ran in the game that started it. So like I like booted up the game, and I see this great cinematic, and it's amazing and beautiful, and it's running smoothly, and then like the actual game starts, and it's like 5 FPS.
Right.
Ooh, this is not going to work.
I know, it's rough. I have upgraded my computer multiple times playing that game, and still, even at my zenith playing the game, they had some pretty bad server issues, because it was a very ambitious game, and they had not figured out, I don't think, the infrastructure for it to make it you know, a very enjoyable experience for the player, especially in highly populated areas with big events. It was just a slog.
Yeah, online gaming was a little bit of a different landscape in 2003.
Oh yeah, so. for sure. This was incredibly inventive for the genre. I think probably one of the most influential in gaming history, especially for online gaming. I would say hands down.
I don't think WoW was till like 2005.
No, right? That was after. Yep. I think Ultima Online was a thing, and maybe EverQuest were.
Yeah, EverQuest was around, but. So yeah, and part of the big thing with MMOs is the community aspect of that. So do you have any like fun stories that you had like with your guild that you want to share?
Oh yeah, for sure. My guild, I was a big PvP player, so that was my wheelhouse. I wasn't so much into the PvE. I just wanted to get cool weapons, cool armor, and fight other people. So the guild that I was in, was called the Shadow Empire, SE. Yeah, very, very original and cool. But we were a PvP specific guild, and those weren't very common in the game at the time. And we were just very highly skilled. Our knowledge of the game was PvP oriented, and in this game, you have to kind of think about it in terms of, like you said, this was in the infancy stages of online gaming. So, you know, the user interface wasn't super friendly, didn't tell you exactly what you needed to do to unlock said profession that would help you do X, Y, and Z. So a lot of it was self-discovered, or just within the guild chat. We would just, you know, trade ideas, trade concepts, and give each other weapons and armor. And as like being part of the guild, we had access to these really strong weapons, and so we were just this really like maxed out PvP guild, and we just owned Tatooine. That was our home base. We were an Imperial guild, so you can pick a faction, and we picked specifically Tatooine because that was a heavily rebel populated planet for the most part, and where we were in is it Bestine? Is that a city on Tatooine?
I don't know.
I think so.
Like the only ones I can think of are like the most Espas, most Isleys. Okay. You're probably right.
I think it is Bestine, but it was in pretty close proximity to Anchorhead, which is a huge rebel stronghold. So we were always outnumbered by rebels, and we were just so efficient and such like a well choreographed and strategized group that we could just, you know, overcome the, you know, insurmountable seeming numbers of rebels coming at us. So that was fun. We were just had a reputation as being, this really strong Imperial guild. We were even hired at one point by, certain merchants of Imperial towns to, save them from rebel invaders and things like that. So it was really cool.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. And you are correct. Bestine is a city.
Okay.
Shortly, apparently, Obi-Wan and Luke Skywalker stayed the night there on their way to Mos Eisley from the Lars homestead.
Interesting.
So there you go. But yes. So, yeah, and you're talking about your guild. And so is Tatooine like one of your favorite worlds to spend time on just because of the guild interaction? Or do you have other places you like to visit a lot?
Yeah, I think like probably the most common and most heavily, the most time that I spent on a certain planet was probably Tatooine and Naboo. Those were the two most. That's where all the people were, and aka the players. I mean, in my world in the game, that's who I wanted to be around because that's who I wanted to kill and compete against. But honestly, like probably some of my favorite planets to visit or to do farming to try to increase my, build my character's levels and max out my professions. Was actually like Dantooine was a really cool planet. They had like really cool wildlife. The thing about the game is it was an open world game. So, open world, even in a bigger context than World of Warcraft or other, contemporary MMOs, probably more like Skyrim, I would say, except much, much less polished and, pretty raw. But yeah, Dantooine was a lot of fun. I liked Locke as well. That was the home of the pirate Nim. Are you familiar at all? Or maybe that was just in the...
It sounds vaguely familiar, but I'm not... I read like a decent amount of legend stuff, but it's always like very like concentrated in certain areas, so there's a lot of stuff I missed.
Okay. Yeah, it was a pretty cool desolate planet with like poisonous lakes and stuff like that, and really cool creatures on the planet. Like they had these Vesp lizards, like these massive lizards you'd have to fight. But when I think of the game, a lot of times I think of those kind of more obscure planets, and of course Dathomir was a super cool planet on the game.
Right.
I mean, you have Night Sisters roaming around, super creepy, eerie. Foggy, just this nasty, desolate planet full of swamps, and of course, home of the Rancor. So, really cool planet.
Yeah, if any of the listeners, if you played Jedi Fallen Order, Dantooine or not Dantooine, Dathomir is a really heavily featured planet in that. It is very similar, just really creepy vibe. You have the Night Sisters and the Night Brothers, and the game takes place after they were massacred by Grievous. So. Yeah,
that's cool.
Really cool.
I didn't realize that. But it makes me want to play that a little bit.
It's a fun game if you have the time. And it's PS4, Xbox One, PC.
Cool.
So it is. If you're into the Dark Soulsy type games, it's really fun. And even if you're not, you can turn it on like basically story mode difficulty, where you kind of just walk through the whole game and just experience like the story.
Oh, nice.
So you kind of spoke a little bit about it when you're talking about your guild and how you guys like work together to advance. Can you I got this from your Galaxy of Beeroes podcast, but can you describe the insane process that it was to become a Jedi? Because when you told that story, it just seemed like, I'm like, how in the world could anyone think this was a good idea?
Yeah, so I think and this is the funny thing. I know I have some of the details right, but I never tried to become Force sensitive to become a Jedi. So I just most of the stuff that I've heard is from other players in the game, and like we talked about earlier, there was no real strong secondary tools to use in the game. Like in World of Warcraft in the early days, you had secondary websites you could use, like Thoughtbot was one of the websites you could use that told you about certain quests, how to get them done, coordinates of where the quests end, and etc. In this game, we had none of that, so. You're just basically exchanging information directly from person to person or from guild to guild. So, what were we talking about? I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought.
Becoming a Force.
Oh, yeah, yes. Okay, got it. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, the way that I understood it, so there was 30 different professions in the game, and that ranged from, very basic professions like a marksman, a scout, a medic, and then there was hybrid professions that were or more advanced professions, like you could be a pistolier in the marksman specialization, or a Terraskasi master, which is part of the brawler the starting class. So then there was even more obscure ones, like you could be an entertainer, you could be a dancer or a musician or a Wookiee hairdresser. That was always how they kind of featured the game, is you could be a Wookiee hairdresser, So, and that's what was cool about the game. There were so many different paths you could take. But to become Force sensitive, you had to master, I think it was a minimum of 4 different classes, and it was random. So you could potentially have to master all 30 classes in order to become Force sensitive. And that wasn't even to become a Jedi. That's just to become Force sensitive in the game, to then eventually learn Force techniques, or to learn the Jedi ways. But actually, I was reading up on it before before we started recording, and there's actually a guide, because this game you can still play now. They have emulators that are running for the game, and there's some pretty good guides out there how to do it. So you have to earn badges in the game to unlock the Force sensitivity. So there's a profession badge, which I believe is what you had to do to try to master these different professions. Content badges, so you had to visit specific theme parks, they called them in the games, and earn these different missions and things like that. But then you had to visit like all of the points of interest in the game as well. So there's like an ancient Krayt dragon skeleton you had to visit. You had to go to the Great Pit of Corcoon on Tatooine, Fort Tuscan. So you basically, in essence, what you had to do is you had to do everything in the game, essentially, just to become Force sensitive. And this took weeks, if not months, just to unlock the ability to be Force sensitive. And then once you became Force sensitive, then you had to start your grind as a Jedi. You had to work up all your powers. And meanwhile, you could be hunted by bounty hunters. They could actually put real bounties on you in the game. And when they killed you, if they killed you, it's permadeath. So you would lose everything you just did, and you have to start over on that character. So yeah, it was crazy. And I think that was one of the best parts about the game, is that the consequences were real. Like, even when you defeated another player, in most MMOs, it's kind of no harm, no foul. Like, they resurrect back at the spawn point with full health. Their armor's fine, or maybe you have to go get it repaired, but it's back to, pre-fight condition, essentially. In this game... Right,
you might just lose a little gold or something like that.
Yeah, something insignificant. In this game, when you died, all of your equipment that was equipped on you at the time took a durability loss and could not be repaired. You could repair it, but there was like a probability of it returning to somewhat of its pre-damaged condition, and that was a low probability. So most of the time, you lost that effectiveness of that weapon or that piece of armor permanently. So the consequences were real.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's like, when you're first starting saying, it could take you weeks or months, I'm like, that's insane. But then I also spend how much time, how many months do you spend trying to get gas in Galaxy of Beeroes?
6 months.
Right, 6 months. But then but then it's permanent death. It's like, all right, so imagine you're trying to get gas for 6 months, but if you lose a GAC round at any point, you lose all of your progress.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like, well, all right, I guess
other players,
I guess I'm just like sticking with Shock T clones or something.
Yeah, exactly. I have a backup plan because, and then the other thing is players were incentivized to do it. Players that were bounty hunters, I mean, that was what they wanted to do. They wanted the highest bounty to kill the toughest player. You always had a target on your back as a Jedi in the game.
Yeah, it makes sense that, everyone's going to want to become a Jedi or Sith or whatever. Like, everyone's going to want to have force powers, so you got to make it hard to get, but that just seems insane.
Yeah, it was a lot. And it was funny, too, because, the Jedi, not only did they have to, be secretive with their whereabouts, a lot of times... You wouldn't see them around. You knew they existed. They were like a legend in the game. There could only be a certain amount of Jedi on each server too.
Wow.
So in order to keep under the radar away from people, they would be grinding experience in these really obscure planets. What was one of? There was just a random planet, Talos. That was one. People that would grind like on Talos in the middle of nowhere, like nowhere near a spaceport, anywhere, just. Fighting some obscure monster, hoping that they can beat it and not get attacked from behind by a bounty hunter,
It's like the episode of the World of Warcraft episode of South Park. It's like, if we just kill like 2 billion of these pigs,
Right.
then we'll have enough experience to take it down.
Exactly. Because they couldn't, there were in the game there was like hotspots of useful things to grind to kill. You get the most experience, and they're not very dangerous. The RNG, as we call it, the random number generator in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, was very real in Star Wars Galaxies, and it was very unbalanced. I mean, you could encounter a random nest of this creature, and the power level of it is just completely random and could just decimate you. And if it kills you as a Jedi, it may be permanent death for you. Or at least it scales back your abilities, and you could eventually die. So, yeah, definitely intense.
That's crazy. Yeah, I guess it's kind of cool in the way that if it's weird that you work so hard to get to this stage of being a Jedi, and then you don't even get to like enjoy it because you have to hide it the whole time so you don't die. But it just kind of reminds me of like just being what it would be like being a Jedi after Order 66.
Right.
Like I was telling, like Jedi Fallen Order, how I was mentioning that earlier, that your protagonist is hiding his abilities as much as he can for as long as he can. Same with like Obi-Wan or Ezra or Kanan, all these characters. Like, well, I can use the Force, but I really shouldn't right now because I'm probably gonna get killed if someone finds out who I am.
Right. Yeah, so, you don't want a target on your back. Absolutely.
I don't know if that was intentional in their design of the game, but I guess it's kind of cool that it manifested itself that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so you never sadly, you never became a Jedi in the game, although, that probably would have been a monster to accomplish. So what's something you were super proud of, like your peak accomplishment you feel like that you're the most proud of in that game?
There was 2 things. That's not your question, but I guess if you're all right, I'll give you 2 things.
Go with it.
But probably one of the coolest things early on for PvP that I did in one of the guilds I was in. I made an alternate account separate from the one I was in the Shadow Empire. So I made a new character on a European server and joined a PvP guild with a bunch of Swedish dudes called the Red Devils. It was RE Devils. I don't know why they spelled it like that. Maybe a Swedish thing. Whatever. But we were, again, just a really high-end PvP guild, even more so than the previous guild. We dressed up a certain way. We had like uniforms and stuff in the game, and it was a lot of fun. But one thing we did, we actually we developed a tournament style of PvP. So PvP in this game, for those who may not know, was not structured like it is in most games that you see now. The PvP in this game was exclusively created by players. You could declare yourself as an overt Imperial or an overt Rebel, and then you could then be attacked by people of the opposing faction, and it kind of spread like a disease almost. If you were to attack somebody who was been declared, the appropriate faction or the opposite faction, then if you attack them, then you are now overt. So it just spread. So like that's how these fights would occur. People would just go overt and then go into a certain planet or a certain city and just have these huge wars. So, most of the PvP in the game was random because, you just saw people and people would start fighting. It was really kind of cool. It was like a schoolyard or something, I guess, but a Star Wars game, so nobody's actually getting hurt. But so what we did is we structured tournaments where we'd had like 3v3. So, our 3 players versus another guild's 3 players. And we do it at a certain time, at this certain city, at this certain location. And we do 5v5. And we recorded them. And I think they're on YouTube, actually. But that was a lot of fun. It was a really cool concept. It felt industrious. It's nothing that the game encouraged us to do. Like, it was just something that our guild leadership had come up with. And it was a lot of fun.
That's cool. I'd be super hesitant to be doing PvP matches when it's permadeath.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, all right, guys, you know the rules. No attacking after someone hits 5 HP.
Right. Yeah, well, the way death worked in that game was you would faint. So if somebody was brought to, 0 health in any of they have like health, action, and mind. Those were the 3 health bars that you had. If you were brought to 0 in any of those health pools, you fell incapacitated or, you essentially fainted. At that point, the person who killed you or made you faint would have to come over to you and then hit the death blow button. Like people had macros and stuff.
Okay.
So, but people did that still all the time. And the type of vengeance that you would feel, you know, after you get death blowed by somebody, you're like, oh my gosh, you just destroyed my armor or my weapons. Like you develop like legitimate animosity towards people, or you could. So,
right.
Yeah, it was real. So the second thing I did that was really cool is, again, on my alternate account, I created, it was a bounty, it was a master swordsman and a master doctor. So it was a really resilient character that did heavy damage. So you could heal yourself and just deal out heavy damage with a two-handed hammer. So it's a really cool profession. Lots of different options. You could use a scythe. You could use, like just a big two-handed sword. I used this. They called it a power hammer, and it's just this massive two-handed hammer that you could beat stuff up with. So I actually soloed. I took down a crate dragon by myself. Which was a lot of fun. I just, it took a long time. I think it took like 45 minutes, and my armor started to break mid-fight. But I downed it and got all of the loot to myself, which was really cool. But yeah, that was probably my two biggest accomplishments.
Nice. So again, going back to Tatooine. That's
Yeah.
all, because I'm assuming that's where you fight your crate dragon.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Nice. So another story. I'm pretty sure you told it on your podcast. I honestly don't remember much about it, but part of the game is you could build structures anywhere. And I remember you having a very interesting story about like building up on like top of a hill or something like that.
Yeah. So my first guild, we were from Bestine, and we were in close proximity to the Anchorhead, which is a huge rebel stronghold. So in the game, your guild could, or certain players could accumulate faction points from doing various missions for the appropriate faction. So we were Imperial, so we earned a ton of Imperial faction points. And you could buy different things. You could actually buy an ATST and, sick it on people and stuff, which was super sweet. Or you could eventually, if you got enough faction points, you could buy your own base. So that's what we did. We placed this, we bought this base, this massive base, and we set it directly south of Anchorhead. You could actually see it. You could see the city from our base, and it was on the hill like I was talking about on the game. And that was another really awesome thing about the game is every single server was completely unique as far as the architecture, where people designed to place structures. You couldn't place a structure in the middle of a huge NPC city or anything like that. There was, was like zones that you could build in and not build in. But so that was one of the really cool things about it. So we placed this Imperial base directly south of this rebel stronghold, and it just created this atmosphere of just mayhem and PvP all the time. And the cool thing about the bases were that the base is just a pretty basic base, 4 walls essentially, but and in the middle you have like a command center where it goes down a few floors even, and there's even Imperial troopers that are inside of the base. And for the enemy to try and conquer your base or defeat it, it's only vulnerable at a certain time. So they have like an hour window where they can defeat the base. And in order to defeat it, they have to infiltrate the base. They have to get down in there, and then they need 4 different specific professions in order to slice the terminal to destroy it. So a lot of things have to fall into place. So, and the professions were very obscure. Like, some of them were normal, like I think you needed a bounty hunter, no problem. But then there was a bioengineer. You had to be a bioengineer, and nobody was a bioengineer. They could create creatures and all different types of things. But so yeah, you needed the right kinds of professions at the right time with enough firepower to break into the base. But it was so much fun. It was very much a sandbox mode. So we created this PvP environment, and pretty much nonstop, the rebels would be charging down from the hill. They would all just be coordinated and just kind of charge at the base, and we would just slaughter them senselessly because we were just a high-end PvP guild, and they were like farmers with pitchforks trying to take us out, and we were just decimating them. It was a lot of fun.
That's crazy. It's so insane to me that a game that came out in 2003 gave you the ability to just build structures.
Right.
Almost wherever you wanted, within reason.
Yes.
I feel like we really just started to see those kind of games come up again in the past 5 or so years with like games like Ark Survival Evolved or Rust or DayZ or stuff like that. But, game that came out in 2003, it's like, yeah, just build your base, like, wherever.
Yeah, I mean, you could build, people had
Just
players...
interact with that world.
Yeah, it was nuts. I mean, there was people that built entire cities. A lot of guilds would have their own cities, so they'd have their own spaceport, they'd have, shops, they'd have vendors, they'd decorate everything. I mean, the amount of data and, no wonder the game was laggy, because most MMOs that I'm aware of have, and most games that you just play online now have instances where, it's a limited sample size. So if there's 10 total players, they're all in one instance in one essentially like mini server. And I am not I'm tech illiterate, so if if I sound like a dummy here, it's because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Right, here, I think I can help with that. Just like a really easy way for me to describe it is with the game Destiny. I used to play that quite a bit back in the day. It's like if you let's say go to Earth, every map is more or less like a giant circuit. Like really, when you break it down, it's just a big loop. And then it's partitioned off into little like pie pieces, and if you're in that loop, you load everyone around you in that loop, or in that pie slice, but you don't load the rest of the loop. So I'm only loading like 10% of the map, and if I go to a different slice, I'm probably going to lose the players behind me. Even if we go together, we're loading into different instances, just however the server could handle it best.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a smart way to do it, too, for World of Warcraft. I mean, the most successful MMO, I think, at this point, pretty handedly. But that's how they made their game, which came out conveniently, pretty much right when Star Wars Galaxies was dying. World of Warcraft came out, and that was where I think the game, part of the reason why the game started to decline was, there was a lot of issues. It was so ambitious that, they had so many different ideas and great ideas, but the execution, oftentimes fell short because they just bit off a lot more than they could chew, I think.
Right. Yeah. It's hard when you're literally building a galaxy. Right. To make all that work.
And there was no instances. I mean, the only instance you would have it was like on a planet by planet basis, So if you were on Naboo, you were sharing, like you were talking about, the circuit with everybody, every CPU, every person, place, or thing is all sharing the same circuit. So
right,
yeah, inevitably things got bogged down and unplayable. Things went missing, you just see some random stuff. You'd see a random like bowl floating in the air. You're like, what is this? Because you could decorate your house immaculately. You could have, animal skins. You could have different types of tables. I mean, there was entire professions that could make home furnishings, and there were stores where people sold these things, like super in depth. It's crazy to think about.
Right. So one thing you mentioned, how like guilds built cities and had their own spaceports. Something I found interesting when I was kind of doing a little more research on this game is that when it first came out, you didn't have ships.
Yeah.
Like for the first, I think they said it's like they announced it before the game came out that they were coming, but you didn't have ships for the first 6 months of the game or something like that. So did you like when you finally got to that point, did you have like a ship that was meaningful to you, or was like you just kind of like got your TIE fighter and rolled with that?
I never played ships. I left the game before you could play them. The jump to light speed was the introduction of ships in the game, and I had pieced out before then, unfortunately. I did hear that it was a lot of fun to play, though. The ship portion of the game I heard was really good.
I guess, yeah, it's always, you obviously didn't stick around to the end of the game, but it's always tough to see these kind of big experienced games go away. Like, how did you kind of make your peace with leaving? Do you have any, like, kind of get to the point where you couldn't do it anymore?
Yeah, like, I had the time, at the time in my life, I didn't have a whole lot going on, but actually I looked it up in April of 2005, the SOE, Sony Online Entertainment, came out with this big overhaul. It was called the Combat Upgrade. And the idea behind it was a major revamping and rewriting of the entire Star Wars Galaxies combat, armor, and weapon system. Which it probably sounded good in theory, and they've even admitted to this in subsequent interviews that it was a stupid idea ultimately, because it drove a ton of people away from the game. Basically what they did is they overhauled the entire combat system. So this combat system you're familiar with, you love. There was nobody going, man, this combat system sucks. Like, I wish they would change it, you know? But they came in, and I'm assuming it probably was more rooted in maybe like an infrastructure change, you know, trying to make the game more stable, and probably made more sense maybe from a coding perspective or something. But, you know, they completely overhauled the health bar, the way that combat interacted, and it just seemed like I was playing a different game. So, you know, it lost a lot of that for me. And then the lag too, you know, the PvP was oftentimes unplayable. It was just so laggy and jumpy, and then World of Warcraft had come out right around that time, and that's when I jumped ship, which is unfortunate.
Right. Do you ever keep contact with any of your old like guildmates?
Yeah. So actually, one guy that I was with my alt, that Swedish guild, is a guy from England. He actually, when I was playing, came to my house. He was visiting America, and he came to our house, and we hung out for a weekend. He stayed with us, hung out with him for, you know, I don't know, 3 days or so, and then he bought us beer underaged. We were underage at the time. We had a good time, you know. We were just hanging out, and then I'm still friends with him, like on social media and stuff, and stay in touch. And one of my best friend's brothers had played the game. We didn't play it together, but he had a completely different experience than I did with the game, and he loved it. He played it way more than I did, and he loved it just as much. So still talk to him as well.
Nice. Yeah, like I feel like I kind of missed the boat on a lot of that, like really heavy like online interaction with gaming. Like I feel like at this, like for most of my history with online games is just playing with my like IRL friends and stuff like that. Like really, Galaxy of Heroes for me is kind of like the biggest. Like I've actually like, you know, stepped into the community and like kind of got more involved with that. Like, you know, I got you guys now, and the guild I'm involved with on my main account. So it's kind of,
the community's super cool. I mean, for you know, I have a pretty vast experience with a lot of different online communities and different games. And honestly, I would put the Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. I would say it is the best community of gamers that I've ever played with, hands down. I mean, just as far as people being respectful, the intelligence level, the varying backgrounds. You know, there's all kinds of people that play this game, and you don't see that in a lot of other games. And I think it is for a reason. You know, World of Warcraft, the fan base for that game, gosh, some of the most insufferable, disgusting stuff you'd ever see in your life in chat, in trade chat they would call, or general chat, which then became trade chat, and just awful, just disgusting, terrible people.
I mean, to be fair, Galaxy of Heroes also has its fair share of pretty terrible people, but you know, as a whole, I feel like if you find your niche, you can, you know, get a nice, cool group of people to play with.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so. It's not perfect, absolutely. I would say like even like, I've played Overwatch. I played that pretty competitively for a while. I mean, the stuff you hear in chat rooms and things, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm literally playing with a bunch of 11-year-olds, and not even just age, but just the people. You're just like, gosh, these are some real degenerates. I don't.
Yeah, I think the worst one for me recently was Mordhau.
Oh, okay. I didn't. I haven't heard about that game.
It was like a medieval combat game, like, you know, knights and stuff like that, and it's just like, the chat was always like just like a never-ending just stream of like racial slurs and stuff like that. I'm like, can I just like get rid of this? Like,
that's how World of Warcraft.
I just want to swing some sword at people.
That's how World of Warcraft was too. It's like it just was a horrible. It was an awful community, and maybe part of it was you know they were sort of in the infancy stages of, you know, ooh, I'm online, I can say whatever I want to say, but at the same time,
right?
I don't know, man. But yeah, this community, Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes community, is by far my favorite, and I think it's super cool. Like meeting you and having you on our show multiple times, and now being on your show, it's a really cool thing, and I'm appreciative of it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's like I feel like just the amount of like people that are like really down to earth, like just like kind of like ignoring like let's say like the top three, it would be with the exception of them, like. The fact that like Zareth or, you know, people like him would like just like pop into other Discords and just you can at him at any time. He's just going to hop in and say hi and give his 2 cents on whatever you're talking about. Like, that's super cool.
100%. I think everybody gets a lot out of it. The community it's not, to me, it seems very real, like Zareth doesn't have to do that kind of stuff, of the Gambit podcast. Right. Like, he doesn't need to pop in and do those kinds of things. And like, I feel like our Discord, there's just a lot of good organic discussion on it. And I see it, more often on bigger Discord channels as well. Just, it's not, what does somebody benefit from just talking for no reason in these, it just comes off as very genuine, and I really like it.
Yeah, definitely been a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed, I'm happy that I got back into this community, because it's like Galaxy Heroes, I downloaded probably maybe 2016. Because I'm like, oh, cool, it's a game on my phone that's Star Wars. I had no idea what I'm doing. I still have the same account from that point. I picked it up probably again last November maybe, and that's when I started listening to you guys. And I finally hit level 85, but no idea what I was doing. My first Gear 12 was Tarkin, and he has a Zeta. So if that tells you anything, that's a lot.
He's a cool character.
I made some poor decisions. Yeah, he's really cool. I was like, oh, so his special does more damage with potency, and this Zeta gives him more potency. So that's cool. Let's do it. All right. Yeah. And I was like,
we've all made poor decisions,
but yeah, yeah. Dark It, Zeta, Magna Guard, and we all have done things we're not proud of. So, do you have anything else you want to say before we kind of close things out?
No, man. I love talking about Star Wars Galaxies. I could honestly talk about it for forever. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm a part of if it's cool, I'm part of a Facebook group that does the emulator. And yeah, I'll link this podcast to that. And if for any reason they're listening, what's up?
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, well, yeah, I really appreciate you coming on tonight. Before we head out, just make sure you check out Galaxy of Beeroes. You guys got Instagram and Twitter at Galaxy of Beeroes. You started YouTube and Twitch. Well, yeah, you've been YouTubing, streaming your podcast for probably a couple months now, right? But you guys got into Twitch recently with doing GAC and stuff like that. And they have a really cool Discord channel, which is probably the easiest way for people to find that is your Instagram. Yeah,
we have the link in our Instagram profile there.
Right. And you've been on a crazy slew of interviews. It feels like you've been on just about every single Galaxy Hero show. I feel like in the past.
Yeah, it's been nuts. It's just, I don't know. It's been lining up that way. But it's been fun. Met a lot of cool people and made some new friendships. This community is just awesome. Every show I've been on, it's been. I feel like the honor's been mine. It's very cool.
You guys are really doing some good stuff over there. So, if anyone's listening to this at this point, go check out Galaxy of Beeroes, Darkit, and Brickhardmeat right there, right here. Run that, and it's a lot of fun. Even if you're not, I would say even if you're not a Star Wars fan, if you're not a Star Wars fan, I'm sorry, but if you're not a Galaxy Heroes gaming fan, I think it's still worthwhile. You guys have a lot of fun stuff going on, whether it's talking about beer or talking about the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
I know how much you love the Clone Wars.
Yeah, we're doing a chronological. I'll never say it right. A chronological viewing of all Star Wars content right now. So it's not in every podcast type of thing, but now we're on to season 5 of the Clone Wars, and I like the Clone Wars. I find there's a lot of downtime in it, and very off episodes that. And gosh, there's so many. 22 episodes of anything. I think I'm going to be burnt out by the end of that.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, 5 is the last full season.
I see. So. There's light at the end of the tunnel for me. I've heard that. So
yeah, 5 is the last full season. 6 is short and is 2/3 good, and then 7 is short and is 2/3 incredible. 1/3.
Okay, that's good. I'm looking forward to it.
You can. I believe in you at this point. All right. Well, you know what, Brick, thanks for joining me. Like I said, check out Galaxy of Beeroes. They do a lot of fun stuff over there. And appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate it.
So thanks again to Brickhardmeat for joining me for this episode. It was a whole lot of fun. And I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation. Thanks to everyone for listening, of course. If you liked what you heard, check me out on Twitter and Instagram at SpicedInPod. You can find me on Patreon. Thespiceton.com is the best resource to find all of my information. And read some articles, check out book reviews, all that stuff. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks as always to Graham Bull for providing the music for this show. And as always, may the force be with you.